Hey there, data nerds. Welcome back to another episode of Data Analysis with John. And today we're going to be doing part two of our two-part episode on how to analyze Likert questions and Net Promoter Score. In this part, we're going to be looking at how to analyze the second part of our two-part question here, which is the reasons why people are not likely to purchase a product in the next year. So if we go to our survey, this is a household survey that we did in Kenya. It's a random household survey, so some people may have heard of the product, some people, had not. Of the people that had heard of the product, if they said they're likely to purchase in the next year, that was captured here. But we also had a follow-up question. If they were unlikely to purchase the product, we asked them, why are you not likely to buy one? This can be really useful information in crafting a marketing program or a sanitation promotion program like we have here to understand what might be the reasons. And we expected, these would be the common reasons like too expensive, don't know how to install it, happy with the toilet I have now, or I don't need a toilet. But we always want to include an other. And in mWater, we have this really great option for adding an other with text box. You see this other choice here when you're creating your question. When you do that, you create one of these questions that has a specify label on it. See over here. That means that when somebody clicks on that answer choice, they're going to get another text box appear that says why, please specify. So that can capture a lot of useful information that, you can't always think of all the reasons somebody might think a particular thing. And you don't want to miss out on that because, if you don't have another choice, people either try to kind of fit the answer into one of the choices you do have, or they just won't answer the question and you will totally miss out on that information. So we have our well-crafted question here. Now let's go to our dashboard. In the last episode, we created this chart from our Likert question that had, the very likely to very unlikely scale for whether somebody is likely to purchase this new toilet product in the next year. So we want to analyze that data we were just looking at for the follow-up question. I'm going to bring in my favorite chart type, a bar graph, and pick the household survey for the data source. And now I'm going to pick that question that had, you remember that question is a multi-choice question. It means people could answer more than one, they could give more than one answer to the question. You check all that apply. So that question is really, suited to a bar graph. And when we pick that, you'll see why. So why are you not likely to buy one is the question. I'll click on that. And here are all the options you just saw for that question. Now, where did this none come from? Well, those are the people that weren't asked the question. Why weren't they asked it? Because they had already said they hadn't heard of the product. So there's no point in asking them any other questions. And of course, they are also, they've been asked whether they were likely to buy it. And if they were likely to buy it, they weren't asked this question also. So that's why most of the responses are none. So we can just uncheck that none box, and that takes care of that problem. And now we can see data that's much more readable. As before, I often like to, when you have these questions with a lot of text, it's helpful to make it a horizontal bar chart by clicking on this horizontal checkbox here. And now we've got our chart, and you can see most people didn't use any of these other answer choices. The dominant answer choice was too expensive, as we kind of expected. But there's a lot of others. Now, when I say a lot, I mean there was only 3 here and 4 here. So it's really good to remember this isn't a really, good sample of people. It turns out the product is somewhat popular, at least among the people that hadn't purchased it yet. So there weren't a lot of detractors to get information from. In those situations, it's always good to make sure you emphasize when you're writing about this in a report or showing it to somebody in a presentation, that this sample is really small. And what can help that is to leave that numerical axis here. I wouldn't want to turn this into a percentage chart. That's why I don't like to make donut charts or pie charts, as they're called, for this type of information, because it kind of conceals the fact when you convert this into percentages, you're going to say, wow, 4 out of 7, that's a lot. But there was only 7 people that were asked the question. So let's go to our label. As always, add a horizontal axis label, number of households, and let's give the chart a name, which is why are you not likely to purchase the product? Okay. So that chart is pretty much ready to go. We'll close it out. It's as I said last time, when you start a certain color theme, it's really good to stick with it. Makes your reports look a lot more professional, and it's easier for the person reading it to know that this data isn't fundamentally different from the other data around it. Often when you use color to encode some other variable, it makes people think that changes in color mean something, so you want to be really careful about that. And it just looks better to have a consistent scheme. I'm going to move this likelihood of purchase. This is a heading. I'm going to move that text box up here where it rightfully belongs, so these charts are the same size. You probably know this by now, but when you drag things around in mWater, they can only go in a particular spot, and it affects everything around it. So it's good to think about that before you move something. If you ever don't like what you did, remember there's always the undo button, which is your friend. Okay, so now we've got this problem with the others. We'd really like to know, why are there all these other people that had this other reason we don't know. Fortunately, we did capture it. First thing I'm going to do is turn off all those other reasons for now, because no one answered them. We don't really need them to be there. You might consider leaving them in a report, because it shows that it shows all the things that they could have picked. But in this case, I think it'll be a little bit better to do this. So what I'm going to do now is add a table that's going to just list all those other responses so that people can see, kind of what the things were that we missed. So to do that, I'm going to drag the table widget right here underneath of that graph. Let's make this one a little shorter because it doesn't need to be so big. And when I click on my table widget, as with everything else, I pick a data source. And now I need to choose my columns. And so what it's going to do is just build a table out of all the fields I choose here. But I really only am interested in one field, and that's fine in mWater. The table doesn't care if you only have one column. It's more like a list then. So we'll just pick select here, and when we go to our fields, you'll notice we had the question, why are you not likely to buy one? We also have another field called other please specify. Specify, it's a little redundant. We add that on the end. So this is where we've stored all those text answers. So it's like another column. If you were to export this data, you'd have one column with that list of reasons, and then you'd have another one with the other choice that was given. So if I click on that, now I have a mostly blank table. So think about why that is. Most of the 1,700 people did not even answer this question, only 4 did. So what I need to do is filter this table to only the people that answered that question. And we covered this before. First, we go down here to add a filter and select. And the way you do this is you go find that question again, other please specify, click on it, and instead of is any of as the default is here, you change that is any of to is not blank. Is not blank means it was filled in. And there we go. We only have 4 reasons as we pretty much expected. The table automatically gave a title, which is kind of clunky here. So probably a good idea to go to the title and change that and make that something like other reason for not wanting to purchase the product. And notice that, that's my title up here, but because it's a one column table, we also have this header here. We can get rid of that just by typing a space there. That won't appear. And great, so let's shrink this table. It doesn't need to be so tall. And here we see the reasons I have no money. Well, that should have been classified as too expensive. So that's probably a misclassification. Same with no money. No money and too expensive. Or maybe we need to add a choice that says, I don't think it's too expensive, but I don't have any money right now, or I don't have the money. So that's an interesting thing. We need a loan to purchase it. Well, maybe they don't want a loan to purchase it. Maybe they just don't have the money and they think it's a reasonable price, but they just can't buy it. So that could feed back into our survey. And if we were going to do another round of this survey, which we probably will, it would be a good idea to add that choice. Now, if you do that, be very, very careful. Don't change any of the existing choices or you'll obliterate the data you already have. Whenever you have a live survey, you should only ever add a choice. You should never subtract a choice or change a choice that's already there. If there is a choice that you don't want to use anymore, instead of deleting it, you could just put it in brackets, don't use this or something, or put some condition on it that never would be true. That's another way to get around that. But just remember, don't ever change the choice in a live survey. We warn you about that if you try to do it, but people sometimes click right through that warning. So here's my table. And the last two reasons are interesting. Have already purchased one, waiting for installation, and have already purchased one, though not installed. So here we clearly missed a possible choice on our question. There should be, I already have one, I just haven't installed it, right? And if you have heard of it and you are likely to buy it, or someone might very likely say I'm likely to buy it because they have bought it, right? And they just haven't installed it. Or they're in the process of buying it. So we've learned something here. It will make our survey better in the future, and this is how we improve our data collection process. We always love to dive into these other answers. It's really easy to just build a graph and just ignore those few others that you see, especially if there's only a few. But it really can improve your methodology and your data collection process if you pay attention to those outliers that you didn't expect. Okay, so there's our nice little graph here. If you wanted to put this into a report, you could just turn off edit mode here. You could either print and export as PDF the whole dashboard, or what I like to do often is to just go in here and do a screen capture of that area, and that gives me a lot of control over the size. If I want it to be smaller or bigger, I can do that, right? So that's a really quick overview of how to analyze multi-choice questions with other responses, and hope you enjoyed that, and I'll catch you next time.